G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here with the conclusion of The Outsiders and first dog on the moon, I hope.
That are probably gonna leave Turnbull vulnerable.
17th of July.
To be honest, I wish Turnbull well. I hope he survives because at the moment, if people were sick about constant leadership changes, I can imagine that, and the grumbling.
One more would be.
Yeah, and it will make it really difficult for the Liberal Party to distinguish itself from Labor. Do you know what I mean? If they remove Turnbull from leadership, it will just be.
Well, there is one way out, at least suggested by Kevin Andrews. This is him speaking to Andrew Bolt earlier.
It would make sense to me to reappoint Mr. Abbott. I mean, he's a man who's been the Prime Minister of the country. He's got a lot of experience. He's seen as a figurehead, I think, of Conservatives within the parliamentary party. This would be a good time to make sure that we reach out to ensure that all the strands of political hues that we represent
Kevin,
are
let's
represented
cut to
in
the
the parliamentary party.
Georgina, really quickly, should he be allowed back in? Should Tony Abbott be brought back? And what ministerial role should he have?
Well, I totally agree with Fatima. I think the country wants a period of political stability. The cabinet is about 9 months old. I think it would be the best thing for the country if the cabinet stays pretty much as it is. A couple of junior ministers have lost their seats at the election, so there will be some shuffling around, certainly at that level. And of course, the National Party, with an increase in its numbers, would probably seek to have an extra seat in cabinet. So there may be a bit of movement there. But I don't think that we're going to see any dramatic cabinet reshuffle, which means we'll probably not see Tony Abbott back in cabinet. Tony Abbott actually has a fantastic amount to contribute to this country and does so very well as the member for Warringah and in public policy debates. But in terms of being on cabinet, I just don't see that happening.
Lauren?
I think we need to remember that Andrew Bolt is, I don't want to use the word obsessed, but he's certainly fixated on Tony Abbott, and he's been pushing almost love letter style Tony Abbott to be coming back for months now. So I think we're going to see more of this push from that side of the media. That also doesn't make it real in a leadership sense.
So there is, you feel overall, just there is more stability in the Liberal Party.
The Liberal Party have to pretend there's, they have to sell
fake
this
it till
line
you
of
make
stability.
it. It's basically the philosophy right, we're all advocating right now.
That's their difference to Labor, apparently. We're stable.
I'm enjoying the amnesia over Tony Abbott's precarious position over the year before he was actually ousted from leadership. But anyway.
All right, let's move on really quickly. I think just short amount of time. Quick answers from everyone on this. How bad will it be or how embarrassing will it be for England now that Boris Johnson is the Foreign Secretary? Georgina?
Not at all. I think it's a great appointment. He's a charismatic, energetic representative. He was a great mayor of London, and he'll be a great representative of the UK. Being foreign minister is about prosecuting your country's national interests, and he'll do that very well.
One quick answer, quick line.
It's summed up in a meme I saw this morning. He's looking at a map and he says, "Where the hell is Rhodesia?"
There
Brilliant.
we go. Fatma?
Look, I wish him well. We need someone who's actually serious. You got South China Sea, you got the Turkish coup recently. We got really serious things going on. I'm just looking
He doesn't seem like a serious man.
Well, you got to be optimistic, I suppose.
Thank you so much. My guests today have been Dr. Lauren Rosemont, Fatma Meacham, and Georgina Downer. And that's it for Sunday Extra this week. If you miss anything, the Sunday Extra podcast is available on our website, or you find us on iTunes. There's the ABC Radio app. Sunday Extra is there too. Senior producer for Sunday Extra is Serpil Chanelmish, and the studio producing today was done by Claudette Worden. Thanks also to producers Mike Woods and Michelle Weeks. Matthew Crawford is our resident birder, and this morning's technical producer was Carrie Dell. After the news on RN, stay tuned for Between the Lines with Tom Switzer. This morning, Tom.
Well, there you go. Not only no first dog on the moon, no apology from him either. I wonder what that bodes. I wonder. This business of a 30-something-year-old recently unemployed delivery driver who rented an 18-ton refrigerated truck, which is probably the biggest one that he could get on his license, or maybe it's hard to rent a 40-ton articulated semi-trailer. I don't know what the story was there. But he lived in a suburb called l'Abattoir. He lived in the abattoir. You know, a place where you kill animals. That was the name of his suburb, and it's apparently a really low rent, high unemployment, working class area of Nice. It's not the part of Nice that the tourists go and look at. And apparently his wife had spat him out. His neighbours reckoned that he used to steal bicycles and sell them to get the money to buy hashish. So he wasn't having a good time living in the south of France. He lived in the south of France, but he didn't enjoy it very much. And on Bastille Day, when the French go out to celebrate liberty, equality, fraternity, freedom and equal status and friendship, fraternity, he took his truck, rented, and he drove it for 2 kilometres, and he must have run over about 120 people. He's killed 84 of them and put 18 of them in intensive care. So I have no doubt there are other people who have relatively minor things, you know, like only a broken leg sort of thing. And he's demonstrated to the rest of the world how much damage you can do with a medium-sized rented refrigerated truck. He didn't have a big one. He didn't have a B-double, you know. It wasn't 40 tonnes. It wasn't a 25-tonne truck. It was an 18-tonne, rigid, single rear axle. As I said, it was probably the biggest thing he was entitled to drive on his licence. But how many years has the world been paying money to be entertained watching movies about truck drivers having temper tantrums and chasing cars and running them over, running through buildings? I mean, people have done that, dude. There was a pub out near Alice Springs where, or maybe it was a roadhouse cafe. Truck driver had the shits with somebody in the building and just went and cranked up his juggernaut and took it straight through the public bar or the restaurant, whatever it was. I'm a bit hazy on those details, but I remember it being talked about on the news as what a terrible temper tantrum that was. Well, yeah, okay, now somebody's done it in the middle of a celebration of liberty, fraternity and equality. A Tunisian Frenchman, born in Tunisia, moved back to France because, let's face it, 50 years ago, 30 years ago, the rave was on that the citizens in the colonial possessions or post-colonial possessions from European colonising powers, they had the right to go back to the mother country. The French in particular, they consider that their Pacific Islands are an integral part of metropolitan France. You know, it's all identical. They're French citizens living in Polynesia. And France had colonies on the north side of Africa. At one point, France was responsible for Syria and Jordan and Egypt and Libya and Algeria. Tunisia, yeah, it's all part of the Anglophone empire. So this is not necessarily an act of Islamic radical terrorism, as it's a post-colonial backlash by somebody who's gone back to, quote, the mother country and found that they were kind of as welcome as a case of herpes. You know, they were tolerated as being necessary, but nobody liked them very much. Anyway, that's him. As for why Turkey wanted to have a bloody military coup, yet another one. The bloody colonels in Turkey. Was it 6 generals and 25 colonels? And 8 of them have run away to Greece in a helicopter and they're asking for political asylum. There are some people who believe that you can make the world a better place by having a temper tantrum, a violent temper tantrum with a force multiplier if possible. I reckon they're all wrong. But the world has been saturated in media that glorifies using force multipliers to have a temper tantrum in order to solve all your problems. At the end of the movie, it's the person who pulls the biggest gun first and shoots fastest who gets the money and the girl, and they drive away into the sunset to live happily ever after. And that gets pumped into people's heads. I think it's a 30-year-old figure that your average 18-year-old had seen 20,000 murders on television. The use of violence, the idea of escalating a disagreement to a shouting match, to a fight, to applying deadly force, that's normal in a lot of societies, and it's been normalised over the past 100 years by people who reckoned that they needed to write something exciting. And invoking death is kind of exciting, you know. It causes people to have a vicarious fear reaction while reading it or listening to it or watching it. But it turns out to be a particularly stupid thing to program the entire society to think along those lines. And that's what's happened. It was interesting to note that one of the commentators on The Outsiders, I think it was the Liberal Party lady, the extreme right-wing Tory advocate, kept harping on the idea that it's only men who are doing these things. And they reckon that domestic violence leads to terrorism. She possibly hasn't considered the idea that that might be a two-way equation, you know, like people whose parents are been exposed to violence might grow up to be violent parents, and then they parent their children violently, and those children grow up to be violent. And you've got a closed loop abuse cycle there where the little girls who grow up watching mummy get punched out by daddy, and then she goes and gets a new boyfriend who punches her out and gets another boyfriend who punches her out. When they're really little, they role model on what they think adults behave like, and then when they go looking for a partner, they go looking for somebody who kind of reminds them on a subconscious level of the adult males they grew up with. So they themselves go through several bad, punchy marriages. And they hang around with people who they can relate to. So they live in cliques and nests of women who've all had several bad marriages and been punched by various people and watched their fathers beat their bloody mothers, and they get the idea that that is how all of society behaves, and they hop up and down in the media, and yeah, it's fashionable to consider that all men are violent because some men are violent. Same way as it's fashionable to consider that all of these violent people who are going off because of the thin little veneer of a very half-assed version of what would otherwise be a pretty pleasant religion. That it's the radical Islam that's causing people to be violent. No, it's the rising level of self-righteous, self-entitled, angry, depressed fuckwits. It's the rising number of them in society. And as global warming bites and the economy shrinks, they can see that there is no prospect that they're ever going to get ahead to the point where they've got all of the things the advertising moguls have told them that they need to have in order to be fully human. And as that sinks in and they realise they've got less and less and less chance at attaining a baseline level of happiness that they think they're entitled to because they were born, therefore they've got to be able to have flat screen TVs in every room of the house and a job and be able to afford a holiday for a month, a year, to run away somewhere else in the world, generally fly there, have a clap catching expedition, come home, be treated for it with a one-shot cure that'll work every time. They want free water to come out of the tap. They want free electricity, and they want instant free communications all around the world. And all this is just a baseline. Oh, this is a basic human right, isn't it? You know, to have drinkable tap water. No, it's not. You have to do a lot of bloody work to organise clean water in the real world if somebody else doesn't do it for you. So yeah, the environment's collapsing. The economies are collapsing. There are more and more angry people, and some of these people are women. And in a male chauvinistic nasty society, the men don't do much child rearing. So if the women want the men to behave better, they should raise their sons not to grow up to be chauvinistic male violent fuckwits. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.